Um, in August 2018, I had what I called a God experience, in which I represented to myself with images and vague ideas the birth of creation, and I imagined myself to be the one separating itself from itself, which was an evil act. And what I created, I did not consciously um, remember doing it. It was a set of images that I tried to interpret with my limited cognitive abilities to try to represent myself the reason for the existence of the world. And I thought that I had separated myself from myself, which was an evil act, which created beauty and love and the will to be reunited. And that there was a third movement, which was the creation of philosophy embodied by Hegel, and that the purpose of philosophy was to teach myself that all things are one, and that I could be brought back to unity through this conceptual understanding. And I started to think that my consciousness was the whole of reality, and that what appeared on the news every day was my reflection, that the world was my mirror. And I remember asking myself, it was probably September 2018, is Vladimir Putin a reflection of me? Is Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, is he a reflection of me? And I started to ask myself this kind of crazy, nonsensical question, like, am I the world? Not me as an empirical individual, but my consciousness. And I started to believe that my empirical consciousness was the world, which is the birth of Lucifer in the mythology. It is the son of light, which thinks himself capable of creating out of his own individuality, whereas his true essence is God, and he makes an intellectual error by mistaking God for his own personhood. And I realized this, and I thought, I am the cause of all evil. I am the Antichrist, or whatever. And I started to become insane in the early time of 2019 when I saw the news, because I thought the world is my mirror. All the horrors, the catastrophes, the conflicts, the death, the suffering that we see in the news every day, this is a reflection of me, and I am the cause of all this evil. And I forgot these ideas in early 2020, and I recovered them a couple of weeks ago. And now I am understanding that what I held to be true is actually true, that what happened in August 2018 was the birth of reason, and that the world is the reflection of my consciousness, the transcendental principle, and that the world is my mirror, and that all the horrors that I see in the world are reflections of my own negativity. And there are stories about nuclear threat, the threat of a nuclear war, Third World War, reciprocal annihilation of the Western powers in the whole world. And I have a contradiction within me that I have not yet solved. And the whole process of Hegel's philosophy is to overcome the contradiction and to transcend yourself, to reestablish equality with yourself, and to aufheben the contradictions. And I have a profound contradiction within myself, is that I believe that my consciousness is the cause of all reality, and that I must convince others that they are a reflection of myself, which is already a very difficult task. But the most difficult task is to convince the family of this empirical being that they are not the ones who gave birth to me by a natural process, but my consciousness gave birth to them by an intellectual process of which I am not yet familiar with. But I must convince my family that I am their cognitive father, which is very difficult to achieve. So there is a conflict within the nuclear family of my empirical self. And the Hermeticists say that the inside and the outside are one. And Hegel says that what is inside and what is outside coincide, and that being is nothing other than the reflection of my own inner self. And the threat of a nuclear war is the inner contradiction that I carry within myself made manifest. And I am the evil principle of reality. I have understood that in August 2018 and even before and after. But by trying to save myself, this is the Salvator Salvendus, the absolute seeking to save himself, I will justify by rational arguments the whole of creation. I will bring about the truth and the proof that people are not free and that only the absolute is free, and I will absolutize myself, and I will carry the burden of all suffering and evil within my own creation. And by this is a dialectical process between what people represent as the Antichrist and Christ. By trying to remove my own evil from the world, I will bring rational justification through the philosophy of Spinoza and Hegel, most notably, and I will bring about the salvation of mankind, because I will prove by rational arguments that men are not free to act and that the only free agent is God, and my purpose is to equalize myself with God, and God must bear the whole responsibility of evil and horrors and suffering in creation. So this is a dialectical trick within the mind of God himself, that God brings about the own justification of his own creation. So I am what people call the Antichrist, but it is a moment in the process of God's development, and I must also become what people call Christ, but not the historical Jesus, but a philosopher with my own limited capabilities, which proves the necessity of all things, so that whatever is necessary, there is no evil in necessity, because you are not free to act, and that the only free agent is God himself. And I will elevate myself through a very difficult and painful path to godhood by conceptually grasping the whole of reality. And I will absolve and purify of all sins my own creation, which is an unconscious intellectual process. And I will remove the sin from all the creatures, and I will carry the burden of having sinned and having introduced evil and negativity within the world, what Hegel calls the separation of the substance and the subject, by re-establishing the identity of substance and subject. And what people call the Antichrist are the own manifestations of my own fears and doubts and anxiety and terrors made manifest in my own reality. And if you want an example, the God of the Muslim is a dialectical God, because he contains within himself mercy, clemency, misericordia, but also wrath and anger and the will to punish. And the God of the Muslim is a dialectical entity, and I have a wrath within me against myself for my own lack of intelligence and beauty and goodness and morality. So I hate myself, and I project my own hatred against myself on the outside. And God's worst enemy is his own reflection in the mirror, but at the same time it is his own best friend, because the mirror shatters your illusions. But the good point about having a mirror is that the mirror never lies. He's always telling the truth. So if you love truth more than anything else, the mirror is your best friend, and you have to make friend with your own image in the mirror. And the way I see it, the world is my own reflection, and I will, by selfishly trying to save myself, I will bring about the salvation of the whole of mankind, because I will prove dialectically, rationally, that men are not free and that only God is free. And this coincidence of necessity necessity and freedom is the becoming conscious of what Hegel calls the concept, which is God becoming conscious of himself as a free, self-sustaining absolute. And yeah, that's what I could say. So I must just add that from an abstract point of view, I possess absolute knowing, but I must now embody my knowledge and go through the negative path of experiencing what I know to be true intellectually, and this would be very difficult, but I must find the inner strength to overcome myself, and by this process bringing about the perfection of creation. And it will be very difficult, I know it. It will be even more difficult than what I imagine, but I must find the inner light, because a light can only shine by illuminating the dark. And I know myself in the bottom of my being to be a light, and I just need the dark to illuminate myself, and I need to make the light shine within the darkness. And I have understood that. So yeah.